the advantage of being early, don't necessarily have to be first, but being early compared to your competitors is a huge, huge advantage. Every month you are ahead of them is an extra month of essentially extra profits or lower costs. That's money that your competitors will never get. That never goes away, that advantage. You need to be doing that if you want to be the winner. The main benefits to GDP growth of the internet was not in the big high-tech companies. According to some research, there was about 25% of the growth of GDP was due to those large companies. But that means 75% of the GDP growth associated with the internet were just regular companies making use of it, doing things better, more effectively, using websites, using e-commerce. That's where the real growth came from. And the same is true of AI. So the first thing is, absolutely, any business should be part of this. There's no reason why your business, no matter how big or small it is, couldn't be the one that makes the difference. What is stopping your business being the next?
Welcome back to the latest episode in the Sonin podcast. I'm pleased to be joined today by Gerry Lawrence, and we're going to be talking about possibly the two most popular vowels in the English language as of the last 24 months. We're going to be talking a lot about AI, so rather than letting me do half a job, would you like to give an introduction to yourself and to Freeman Clarke?
Sure, yeah. So I run one of the regions for Freeman Clarke. Freeman Clarke is a business where we have a whole team of about 100 really top-notch CIOs and CTOs. So people who really know technology, but actually they're just generally good business leaders as well. And essentially every mid-sized business needs somebody with that skill set. But a lot of the time they can't afford it. So we do that on a fractional basis for people. So for a day or two a week, we'll have somebody help a business and lead their IT strategy and actually make it all happen.
Amazing. Brilliant. Sounds great. So from your seat, obviously, that means that you have a fantastic view across a whole host of different businesses, and therefore you're in a great position to talk to us a little bit about AI and what you're seeing across your clients as well. So probably a good starting point is there's so much noise around AI, lots of excitement, but I think there's also a fair amount of fear as well. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about where and why business leaders are still hesitating slightly with AI.
Yes. Well, there has been a lot of noise about if you try and do something with AI, is it actually going to work? Or more importantly, is it going to create some value that's of any use to your business? And the answer is, well, it might and it might not. It depends how you approach it. It's no different from any other technology in that respect. If you just jump on the bandwagon and say, I'm going to implement a new technology and just expect that to be the thing that makes it work, it doesn't work like that. The people who really win at this, they start from their business perspective, and they're looking at, well, where is it going to make a meaningful difference to my business? How is it going to make me more profitable? How is it going to engage my customers, my clients more? Those are the places where you're going to really make a difference. And if you approach it that way, then absolutely you can make a difference. So I do understand the fear, and it's very easy with modern newscasters to paint a really negative picture. But of course, it's that's not the reality. You can make this stuff work really well, and it's remarkable how fast it's developing. So if anything, I would encourage people to jump on that now rather than leave it another year.
Yeah. So obviously with where we are at the moment, there's a lot of noise. Every LinkedIn feed, every news article is just filled with AI. But I think there's still a certain amount of hesitation maybe in uptake. So with your view across the market, what do you think are the reasons why business leaders are maybe hesitating slightly still?
Well, fundamentally, it's very easy for the media to paint a negative picture, and people seem to love reading about the negativity of everything. So one can point at horror stories of somebody sending their team out to do something with AI, and does it make a difference to their business? Perhaps not. So of course that's going to put you off jumping in and doing something meaningful. But that misses the point. What you really need to do is, like with any new technology, figure out how is it going to make a meaningful difference to your business? Where is it going to really add value? How can it add profits ultimately, or reduce costs, or engage your clients or customers more deeply so that you retain them for longer? And if you approach AI in that way and you start by thinking about the business and where it will make that difference, then so long as you manage the implementation well and you do it effectively, it will be good. So that's what we find with the businesses we work with.
Yeah, amazing. So knowing what you want rather than approaching just from a straight technology, knowing your objectives at the starting point. I guess hand in hand with that, then where are you seeing that the businesses are actually really creating value? What are their objectives and where are they succeeding?
So this all comes down to you have to look at where is the mix between things that are possible today versus what are the use cases where there's genuinely a larger opportunity. And certainly if I look at clients that we've already had successful initiatives with, there's a lot of cases where, say, something like customer support is a really good use case. Often there's a lot of people involved in customer support teams, and creating AI-based knowledge base for them to use rather than the traditional trying to keyword search through a bunch of documents that you have, it's so much better. AI understands context in a way that just searching through documents doesn't. So when we implement that kind of knowledge base for a company, we've seen it make a 25% difference uplift in productivity for support teams in terms of the number of tickets that they can deliver. And that's really meaningful. If you've got 20 people in support, that's really good. And in fact, in the both cases where we've done it with clients, they were teams that were slightly under the cosh, as it were. They had too many. They were overflowing with tickets, and this allowed them to be much more responsive. And so in those cases, they didn't make the team smaller, but it meant that the quality of response was so much better for the customers. So that's one example. And another interesting example was where another company was looking at, can we validate orders? And current AI is very good at detecting anomalies, both in words and in pictures. But in this case, it was words. If you take orders that come in via email and you validate them versus, does this look normal? Or is there something weird about this order? Does it look like it's 10 times more than they've ever ordered before? Or is there something missing that is normally in that order? Those kind of things, again, it can be very effective at. So we see real differences because the knock-on impact of that was that it increased the quality level of that order taking. And of course, that means you make fewer mistakes that down the road are much harder to fix. So if you shipped out your goods to that customer and then to find out that there was a mistake, the cost of fixing it is much higher than detecting that anomaly at the beginning. Salesperson can just pick up the phone and figure out whether it's real or not. And then job done. Everyone feels happy. They feel like they've had a great service and there were no mistakes.
Yeah, amazing. So, I mean, it's quite interesting. A lot of the use cases that you've talked about there are very kind of hand in hand with humans. Of course, one of the fears that is resplendent is this idea that we're all going to be replaced.
Yeah.
But when you're implementing some of these projects, you must encounter some of that resistance from the teams that they're going into. Have you got any top tips for people of how to tackle that?
Okay, so my personal feeling at the moment is that for most cases, it's still best to have a human in the loop. And there's many reasons for that. But although it seems tempting to say, let's say with customer service, to say, let's just make an AI chatbot directly interface with our clients, it can work, but there are just so many difficulties in that I'm worried still at the moment that that's the right thing to do. So I generally encourage people to still keep the human in the loop. And so because of that, there is much less of the reaction from the teams because you're making them more efficient, but you're not saying I'm replacing your job. And so everybody's much more on board and everyone likes to be more efficient and feel like they're giving a better quality of service. So it's an easier win culturally as well. So I believe at the moment that's the right way. And maybe eventually AI will be so good that maybe humans are not needed in the loop. But for a while, for sure, this is certainly the current approach that works best.
I guess so. That's a common worry for people, I think, and probably that impacts culture and everything else inside organisations, of course. Do you come across any other worries typically from clients? Is just across the gamut of AI?
Yes, I suppose this links in with my um, if I relate it to normal, say, software development, where you would create a product and you'd be able to test it. Well, with the AI, sometimes it's very hard to test because the results that you get back from AI can be different, even for the same question. So this makes it very hard, because if my then business worry is if I use the, let's say, answers that are being given by an AI and I feed those through to my customers, what if it is giving me the wrong answer, and how would I spot that and know that? And that is difficult, because ultimately it's still your reputation or the business's reputation that's on the line. If you delegate that to this AI, you need to be really confident that it really is living up to your expectations. So that's the worry. And again, I suppose back to what's the answer to that? Well, at the moment, the answer is have some kind of positive feedback loop from humans in there, so that you can keep improving it and make sure that those things don't slip through.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And I think, maybe some of what we're talking about there is whether or not, traditionally in software, there's deterministic, if this, then that. And so that defines quality to some degree. But with AI, we're in a different field. So does that mean that you think we need to think differently about what quality means and how we assure it?
Absolutely, we do have to think differently, because in the world of AI, you ask AI a single question, you may get 10 different answers. And you need to be confident that all of those 10 different answers are correct. And maybe they are, but just in a slightly different way. And this is just because of the way AI works. It doesn't really understand the underlying meaning of those 10 answers. It's just giving you 10 answers, which are all reasonable and or probabilistically correct, let's say, is the way to put it in techie language. And that's fine. That means that the traditional methods of QA that we used to use when I was running large software teams, we'd have thousands of test cases, and every new piece of software would have an extra test case or a set of them added. And every time you change anything, you'd run all of those tests using automated testing regimes. And that's great when the answers are very predictable. But in this case, this lends itself more to a different setup, where you need a feedback loop for every time that AI is asked to do anything, preferably on the live service, so that every time it gets asked a question, the answer is judged to either be good or bad, and then that is fed back into the system, so that it continuously learns. So in a way, that's much like humans learn. When you teach a child to talk, you're continuously giving feedback on pronunciation, and it's very instant and it's live. It's done all of the time. And that's more like the way that we need to be treating QA for AI projects.
Yeah. So it's not something we can do at the deployment point. It's something that it becomes an operational function alongside everything else. Yeah, 100%. Okay. So we talked about some of the kind of the things that people are concerned about, maybe. Looking at it from the other side, there are huge numbers of tremendously successful AI projects as well, of course. Do you have any top tips for what increases your chances of being one of those people with a successful AI project?
Okay, so I suppose, not unlike any other business initiative, a successful project relies first on, is there a good case for it? So if you're doing something, and the riskier a project is, the bigger the potential return should be. So with AI initiatives, I would be looking for initiatives that immediately look like they have the potential to give a really massive return, like a 10x return on your investment, at least. And if you can't find one of those in your business, then you're probably not looking hard enough, because every business can be improved in all sorts of different ways. So the first thing is start there. Make sure there's a really strong financial case, or perhaps it's a customer stickiness case, which ultimately ends up in finance. But
Ends up there in the end. Yeah.
but look for things that are really going to make a difference. Maybe they're going to set you apart from your competitors, or just massively reduce your costs by improving efficiency. If you start there, then you've got a really good chance of winning. And then make sure that it's just really run well. Just like any other IT initiative, it should be run such that it isn't separate from the business. This is a business change. It needs to include people. You need to get buy-in. You need to make sure that everyone knows what's going on and how to make it all work together. And if you do it that way, then you stand a much better chance of successfully delivering the thing in the first place. So those two things combined, great returns plus really strong execution with people who know what they're doing and good leadership, then you'll win. If those things aren't in place, most likely it will go wrong.
Yep. Okay, that sounds good. And traditionally, a key part of building a successful piece of software or product anyway is engaging people, but maybe more so with AI. Could you talk to us a little bit more about maybe why with AI projects it's so important to get the engagement with the team?
Okay, yes. So I suppose people in general are a combination of two completely different things. On the one hand, everybody loves novelty. We love new things. So new shiny things are great. They're a great attractor. But the complete opposite of that is also true of humans, which is we hate change. We love sticking to our routines. How often do you go into Starbucks and order the exact same coffee? It's just, we're creatures of habit. And of course, in business, when you do something new, you're trying to navigate those two different emotions. And some people are more on one side of that, and some people are more the other. There is no, everybody's a bit of everything. And actually, we're sometimes different depending on the time of day or what the weather is. And so you have to appeal to both sides and acknowledge that change is hard. And it's all about making sure you manage that change through the people, and at the same time get them excited about the novelty and the improvement that it can make to the business and to the customers. So yeah, it turns out, just like everything else in business, it's all about leadership. It's all about making sure that people really understand why you're doing something, and then making sure that they're all feeling part of the process and they feel listened to, and that they're not scared or worried about the change. And that if they are, then you talk that through and make sure they understand why they needn't be.
Yep. Amazing. I guess hand in hand with that, talking about maybe the similarities between how you would do any kind of technology project, is there any way that you would vary how you'd assess a business case from an AI point of view versus a traditional software business case?
That's interesting. I suppose I would, in a way, I would say software development in general has always been quite difficult for businesses to take on as custom development work, because it's so there's usually a lot involved. There's some classic cases of people thinking they need something custom, but maybe they didn't really, and so that has been difficult to judge. But often the right answer was do that last. Don't revert to custom software development unless you really need to. But the results, if you need it and if you do it well, can be amazing. So you approach it that way. The thing about AI initiatives is that they require different things. So the emphasis is not so much on needing to find a bunch of hardcore software developers who are really good at turning your thoughts into reality, but you need to look at different aspects. Perhaps, what does your data look like? Do you even have any that is appropriate for this use case? And so you need to judge different aspects and maybe weight them more strongly. So it isn't all about can you do it? Can I make that work? It's more looking at, is it even possible, and will those results bear fruit? So I feel that there's a broader range, and actually in today's world, you ought to be looking at much faster experiments to see whether the thing is even vaguely possible. Because if you can't make something work within a very short amount of time, literally days, then maybe it isn't the right thing to be doing. There's a lot of AI tools available today, and there's many things that you can just try things out on. I would encourage people to do that and use that as a big driver of whether or not is that the right thing to be doing, because maybe it isn't yet possible, and you just need to wait 6 months, and that's maybe the right solution. Even if you think, oh, this is a brilliant idea, but don't do it yet. Just wait, and then it'll work.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing. So I think we were last time we met, and we were having a drink in East Pottage, and we were talking about how things have changed since maybe when we started in the world of IT. Now things are moving so rapidly, and every day there's a new frontier model or a new application or whatever else. What's your view on how you assess what's ready now, whether it's something you could roll into a business now, whether it stays in pilot, and how you deal with that continual change and dealing with the fact that tomorrow could look very different to today?
Yes, so it's very difficult. The first thing, very difficult. At the moment, I feel as if I'm continuously reading, watching, listening to people to see what's currently going on. And I have a kind of a personal list of things that I believe are today pretty mature, and others where I think, well, that's just about coming in now. And there's others where I think, well, maybe in a year's time that'll be solved, but not yet. That's a difficult list to maintain because it changes so quickly. And anything I would say today could well be changed literally tomorrow. Somebody will make an announcement on the podcast. Yeah, but and that is honestly where we're at with this. Things can change rapidly, and it all depends where other people in the world, obviously lots of people in Silicon Valley working on this and making massive changes and making huge strides forward. So this is, it is difficult to stay on top of, but you need to look at that in context. Where it makes a difference, let's say for business, is that you need to make sure that when you are about to do something, and particularly if you're about to invest money into something and say, I'm going to solve this problem for my business, then you need to be sure that the business case for that works today. And that you also imagine the case where, well, what if in 6 months' time, that's just a generic function of ChatGPT or Copilot or Grok, right? Maybe it will be, or Claude, right? All of these large organizations are working on this stuff, and maybe the functionality you're looking for will just be solved at that point. So you need to be sure that if you're working on something, it needs to work with the numbers you have available today. So if you're going to spend 100,000 on it, then make sure that it pays for itself, even if in 6 months' time you could have done it for 10.
Yeah.
And then you just have to say, well, okay, I had it 6 months early, I paid for it, but don't worry, the return was $1 million. So do I care at that point? Probably not.
Yeah. Because I guess this leads on to one of the issues potentially of kind of paralysis of decision making, because tomorrow it might be there for $10 a month or whatever it is. So why do you think people should be acting on that kind of AI opportunity now rather than waiting for next month?
Right. So fast moving world that we're in, it's super important to be ahead of the game. I mean, it's the most important factor of any innovation is pace. So I talk to a lot of people about innovation, and that is the main failing of why things don't really succeed. It's because of lack of pace. And being the advantage of being early, don't necessarily have to be first, but being early compared to your competitors is a huge, huge advantage. And what happens is every month you are ahead of them is an extra month of essentially extra profits or lower costs. And that's money that your competitors will never get. So that never goes away, that advantage. So you need to be doing that if you want to be the winner.
Yeah.
And in today's world, we're just competing against companies often internationally. So the competition may even come from abroad. And are you really on top of what they're doing? That's the risk. If you're not, then that's where you need to focus. So with a new technology like this, it's even more important to be ahead. And it's very easy for some new company to decide we're going to focus on this narrow piece of your business, and we're going to do it a little bit better because we're using AI, and eventually that takes away from your business. And if you're too late, the opportunity's gone.
It's interesting. So in a fast or a world where you want to move fast and be able to iterate and try new things, typically there are things that you have to get set in place so you're not building on sand.
Yeah.
What do those look like for AI projects?
Okay. I suppose the foundation, if you like, of AI, the best AI projects are the ones with, let's say, the most data. And going back to my previous point, I suppose it's the most reinforceably good data. But yes, if you have good data, then you've got access to it. And if you don't have data, you need to look at where can you capture that. So do you have the ability to do that with your existing business? And is that something you can turn on and start capturing it? So that fundamentally is a huge win. And then I suppose the next for me is to make sure that the people in the business are absolutely aligned with that, and they understand the benefits that it's going to have. Because if they see it both for their own jobs, I mean almost any job now, it's a bit like having an army of little AI helpers in whatever your job is. If you're in video production, you'd expect to have some extra resources helping you to do what was normally your day job. So if that attitude and that way of working filters through the whole business culturally, then those two things combined are really I suppose the most solid ingredients to build that foundation.
And you talked about the making it permeate throughout the organization. Does that mean that you think that there needs to be changes in structure? Does it fall under a typical CTO, CIO role? Will there be specific AI roles in the future?
I'm not convinced of that. I think this is the kind of thing that's happened in the early days of the internet. People would employ a chief internet officer, and what was
so many of them now?
No, exactly. It's not really a thing, is it? And I believe that's true of any fundamentally big technology that really changes the world. It just becomes part of normal life. So it took about 5 or 6 years for the internet to go from nobody's really heard of it to, well, I'm not going to start a business unless I can register the domain name, create a website, and have email. Right? That was about 5 or 6 years from nothing to that. And we're now in year 3 of AI. So I suspect that within the next 2 to 3 years, there just won't be business without AI. It will just be a normal part of business. There doesn't need to be anything special. For me, even the people have talked about job titles of prompt engineer, and I feel as if that's just part of normal business, and may even go away completely because the AI can prompt itself. It's not necessarily the right way of approaching it. So yeah.
Interesting. So I guess if there was one kind of key takeaway, maybe one's a bit unfair. If there are a couple of key takeaways that you'd like people to take from this, what would they be?
Right. Well, the first one for me is the scale of the opportunity is immense.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'll put this back into some actual facts, which is, if I compare it to the internet again, the main benefit to GDP growth of the internet was not in the big high-tech companies. Sure, they help grow the economy. According to some research, there was about 25% of the growth of GDP was due to those large companies. But that means 75% of the GDP growth associated with the internet were just regular companies making use of it, doing things better, more effectively, using websites, using e-commerce. That's where the real growth came from. And the same is true of AI. So the first thing is, absolutely, any business should be part of this. And there's no reason why your business, no matter how big or small it is, couldn't be the one that makes the difference. What is stopping your business being the next Netflix? right? But relating to your industry, nothing. And in fact, when these large technical changes happen, they actually make it even easier for any company to disrupt. And so jumping on it now, being proactive, let's talk about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, my favorite book. Stephen Covey had it right. The very first habit is be proactive. And if you're proactive with this now, there's an immense opportunity.
Yeah. Well, we see it with every platform change, don't we? That there are new ways of doing things and new leaders arrive and take control. That's amazing. Thank you. It's been really interesting. I think we've covered off a fair bit. I mean, this is probably something we could do for hours. But I think we've covered off lots of different bits. We've talked about maybe where some of the hype is and the importance of tying it back to reality and what business objectives and what people want to get out of it. We've talked about where some businesses are slightly reticent and risk averse, but actually there's a tremendous opportunity out there. And you gave us some good kind of notes around the return you should hope for from a higher risk project and how big the impact should be. Talked about people a lot and the importance of them being involved in the change as well. We talked about the pace of delivery. We talked about the future as well and how to make decisions in a fast-moving climate. What else have I missed? I think we talked about.
Yeah, that's super.
Hopefully that's some good summary. It's been really good. It's been great having you on. Next time we do this, it might just be AI versions of ourselves doing it.
Exactly. In fact, there was a I think a Korean podcaster who created an AI avatar and did an entire live podcast episode using this AI avatar, and apparently nobody noticed. So that's where we're at today.
There we are. Well, we may be joining all of the Instagram influencers who aren't real very soon. So, thank you very much for coming on. Thoroughly appreciate it. And hopefully you'll come back another time and talk more about this because there's loads of good stuff to cover.
Excellent. Love to. Thanks very much.
Thank you.